Hey, what's up, everybody? We have made it. We have made it to Selection Sunday evening. Welcome to our traditional, like any other, our In the Circle live stream extravaganza. I'm Victor Anderson, the gentleman you see, national softball editor from Extra Innings Softball, Justin McLeod. And I know Eric Lopez, he is out on assignment. He is actually literally 10 minutes down the road from me at the UCF watch party. Depending on how things go, Justin, we may get Eric tonight. And if things don't go the wrong way, I may have to bail. I may have to sneak out of the house to bail Eric out of a potential correctional facility. But look, we're here. All the talking, all the prognostication, everything, it all ends in just under 30 minutes.
Hopefully we can avoid bail money or the need for bail money. That would be positive.
Yes.
But it's I'm not gonna lie. This afternoon I was just kind of sitting around my office like, okay, the anticipation's it's kicking in now. It's that time. You can tell it's that time.
Yes. Yes. It's we're gonna have a loaded show tonight for y'all. You know where to follow us. Follow us on our Twitter accounts. Follow the show at Inner Circle SB. Follow Extra Inning Softball at Extra Inning SB. Of course, follow Justin at Just Facts Ma'am. We're waiting to see if we're gonna get what we've had the last few years, where we get the top four seeds announced in alphabetical order. As of 6:32 Eastern Time, there have been no tweets yet indicating that the top four will be announced. So that likely means, Justin, and of course, we'll check back and forth as we get more information. So it likely seems to me, Justin, we may not know who the top four seeds are going to be until the selection show starts at the top of the hour.
I mean, it's kind of the way it looks, which I would say it's a departure from normal. But what is normal at this point? What is normal?
Touche. What is normal? What is normal? It is so crazy. So we got everybody in our comments. You know, you can follow us. Make sure you send us your questions in the chat. We'll get to them, as many of them as possible throughout the show. And oh, by the way, if you missed our live stream this afternoon where we had Villanova head coach Bridget Orchard joining us, you certainly want to watch that again. We really went in depth about the top seeds, the bubble situation, all of that, and we'll certainly rehash that as we get ready to go to the selection show at the top of the hour. But coming up on our show tonight, look, we spare no expense, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the guests. Look at the guest list we got coming up. 7:45. We're gonna have ACC Network Xtra analyst and former Seminole pitcher Caylan Arnold. She'll be joining us to talk about the Seminoles' path to Oklahoma City. 8:15 Eastern. Andrew Haynes, play-by-play man for Texas softball. The Longhorns battling with UCF to see who can get one of those last two hosting spots. And then we're scheduled 8:45 Eastern, 8:30 Eastern to have Jenna Passera from the Pac-12 Network to join us. And again, depending on how things go with UCF, we may have Eric Lopez and a couple surprises joining us during our live stream as well. But again, all that's dependent on if UCF gets in the host or not. Now, we released it earlier this morning on extrainningssoftball.com. We talked about it earlier during our live stream this afternoon, so let's get to it one more time. The final things were that who was going to be that two, and then who was going to be kind of in that situation with UCF in Texas. And right now, I'm still convinced UCF is going to be hosting, but the concern I have is Texas having multiple teams that can bust to Austin and they could get the nod over UCF. In spite of the fact UCF beat Texas head to head in Clearwater earlier this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you're talking about the hosting, and you never know what's going to have the ultimate deciding factor. Is it going to be wins, losses, head-to-head, common opponents, conference, different conference? Like, it's just what's going to be that final thing. What that's going to be. That's the thing that always gets me every selection Sunday is what's going to be the determining factor. I mean, that's gonna be interesting tonight because I think there's a few that the determining factor could be, and I don't know what the committee's going to choose as their top criterion.
And it feels, and Justin, every year we know this, we follow this as long as we have. The criteria with the committee is different on a year-to-year basis. So it's hard to get a read on what the committee's going to want to do every year because their criteria changes on a year-to-year basis.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, because yes, you have a committee change, which means you have different people, and that's all well and good. But I think it's one of those things where you have some basic criterion and everybody knows you're going to stick to that. You know, you're going to have RPI as a factor. That's always going to be the case. You know, you're going to have some things that are going to be the case. I think the thing that gets me is every year just enough interesting things, and I use interesting. It's my favorite euphemism. I'm going to use it a lot tonight, I have a feeling. But I think just enough interesting things happen to get it to the point of, okay, what is this? What is this falling into? Is it falling into this category? Is it falling into that category? Is it falling into this other category? Just because, I mean, the way the game goes. I mean, if you look, for instance, at the Pac-12 this year, the Pac-12 is not what we expected in a lot of different ways. Some things are, some things aren't. But you look at the Pac-12 and it's okay, well, how are those teams seen? Are they seen on this scale? Are they seen on this scale? Are they seen on this metric? You just don't know what the end all be all is going to be. And whatever it is going to define how this bracket turns out, how the committee made their decisions and all that. It's just random enough and just interesting enough. That's two. Just to keep us wondering just for enough time until we get there, and then it's gonna be like, what I'm expecting.
We already have some interesting questions in our chat, so keep the questions coming. The first one, Justin, is for Mr. Phil Esposito, a friend of the show. What will be your Dr. Pepper count for this evening, sir? I have the over-under at 5.5 personally.
This came along for the live show. We're prepared tonight. So if y'all see me drinking from my glass here, or you hear me pouring more soda midway through the live show, judge me as much as you like. Just know I'm doing it to continue functioning at my normal high level. It's liquid energy.
Can you
and
put that 2 liter up again, Justin? Put that 2 liter up again for the people can see, sir. There it is. Okay, so got another question, Justin. Mm-hmm. In the bracket, looks like we got Fabric 86. Now, this is likely an error question. Clemson over Duke. Well, I'm thinking probably because Clemson won fine. Well, Clemson probably had a stronger resume than Duke, and even though Duke did make it to the ACC tournament final, what would be your rationale for Clemson over Duke?
I mean, if I'm looking body of work, I probably have Clemson by a slim margin. The slim margin sounds odd considering they're 4 spots back, but slim margin when you're seeding top 16 can be 4 spots just because, I mean, if Clemson and Duke are both ACC teams, for instance, and there's a slim margin between them, then that, you're not necessarily getting, unless it's like literally razor thin, you're not necessarily going to have them back to back because you've got to fit in the Tennessees of the world as you see at 10. And so I think it's probably a slim margin. Body of work, I kind of like Clemson better. They did make the tournament final, so they've got the recency going in their favor. I think the thing that gets me, though, is I think all 4 ACCs have been locks to host for a while. So then I think it's a matter of weighing them 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got 1, 2, Virginia Tech, Florida State, and then it's just a matter of, okay, Clemson, Duke. I mean, I see Clemson at 9. I think they're a good top 10 team. I think Duke at 13 is probably pretty fair. And again, I know I'm biased because I'm the publisher that published the bracketology. It didn't do it, but it published. I get that. But I think it really is just that matter of that slim margin, and then the spots between just being you got to fill. I mean, I'll be surprised every year if there's a lot of teams from the same conference that go back to back. So I feel like the committee always wants to have a little bit of separation. So I think that probably helps explain the chasm between 9 and 13. But body of work overall, like Clemson's better than Duke personally.
Now, Parker Dickerson put up this message in the chat saying Michelle Smith said that there are some. He hopes that means UCF is hosting. I don't know. We've seen some surprises before.
We have more than a couple of times. I mean, and
yep.
then I mean, to the point of the comment, surprise can take on different definitions. Surprise can be Washington at 16. Surprise can be, Missouri going to Oklahoma. Surprise can be UCF 15. Surprise can be Arizona, in the bracket as a 2 seed somewhere. Like, surprise takes on a lot of definitions. So that's up there with interesting on the euphemism list for the evening, I think. It's just one of those things. I mean, I didn't hear Michelle say that. I don't know where read it or whatever, but surprises is such a fun word. I think every year with the bracket, though, you've got surprises. It's just a matter of what those surprises are, I guess. Oh, that's me. Cool. But the thing with the surprises, to your point, Parker Dickerson, is I think we're more likely to see the UCF host surprise, to your point, before we see the Missouri to Oklahoma, before we see any of that. Oh, we have Mr. Anderson at a different angle.
Yes, I had to change the way I'm going to be going on the air to make sure that we have no connectivity issues for a program of this magnitude, the guests that we're going to be having on. So I got to make sure we're on the same page here this evening.
Well, you sound better than you have all night.
Thank you. I hope that is a trend for this evening's festivities. But yeah, it's interesting with the whole UCF dynamic. Right now, Eric has them listed as the number 15 national seed, and ironically enough, he has them hosting Texas as a 2. And look, and Mike, I see your comment. He said, they're just gonna screw UCF. I hope you're wrong, brother. I hope you're wrong. Because if this year does not reward a team from outside the mainstream 5 as a host to make the postseason, then they're never gonna get in. They're never gonna get in. I'm just fully convinced of that. I really am.
I mean, the thing too, it's important to leave screwing UCF on the proper scale, because UCF, if they host, is going to get a very good 2 seed.
Yes.
So if they don't host, yes, UCF's getting screwed. But remember, even if they host, they're going to get a very good 2 seed and likely a very good 3 seed. 2 reasons. One, anytime a non-Power 5 in this day and age hosts, that's probably going to happen. But 2, UCF's a bunch of teams are going to have to fly. And the teams that are going to have to fly are going to come from, in large part, Power 5 conferences.
Yeah.
So that's an important perspective to have as we go through the evening, because that's going to happen. If UCF hosts, that's going to happen.
Hey, we got Texas you got to consider. LSU is a possibility. Kentucky, potentially. It's a lot of things that you have to consider in terms of, okay, if UCF hosts, who's going to be the 2 seed? Now, what hurt UCF in terms of increasing their viability to host, you don't have as many teams in the state of Florida that made the tournament. North Florida lost in the ASUN final to Liberty. FAMU didn't even make it to FAMU lost in the MEAC semifinals. So you don't have those many teams from Florida that you could potentially bust to UCF as a host. You have that with Texas. Texas A&M can bust. You have other schools that can bust potentially out to Austin. So that can be, and Eric brought this up when we went live earlier this afternoon, how if Texas gets the nod, it's going to be because they want to stay within that infamous 400-mile radius, which hopefully will be going away pretty soon, and it is what it is. Steve B, one of our many passionate Sooner fans, hoping Mizzou is not a 2 seed, saying I will give the Mike White one finger salute if Mizzou comes to North.
Well, and I think it was Eric who made the point earlier, was something that I thought was really interesting, and he may have made it on air, may have made it off, the days and the hours and the conversations we're running together at this point. But I remember him saying, the committee likes to give Oklahoma a team that they can then say, hey, we gave them a tough team.
Yes.
They ran roughshod over them, but we gave them a tough team. Hey, we even bust. We stayed within our rules. We gave them tough teams. And I get why they do that. And honestly, that's within the parameters of the committee. So I think Missouri, if they were to go to Norman, would kind of be in the same vein. Hey, we gave them a battle. But if you send a high 2 seed, which Missouri's played themselves into being, if they're not a host, they're a high 2. If you send a high 2 seed to the overwhelming number 1 overall seed, that's a little bit of an issue to me.
I think that would be a little bit much for me, because you're sending a team who played for the SEC championship to Norman as a high 2 seed, and I don't know. I honestly don't know. I hope it's not a situation like it was with Wichita State last year, who got sent to Norman as a 2 seed, and Patty Gasso even mentioned it in her post-game press conference after the Sooners advanced to Supers. I'll be fascinated to see what the committee does. We're 13 minutes away. Rod Steffler, we echo your sentiments, sir. It is softball Christmas time. What are softball fans, Justin, more excited for? Selection Sunday or opening day? What would you think is the higher excitement level for fans?
I think it's got to be Selection Sunday. I mean, opening day is there. Selection Sunday, I feel like, has a different level to it, because when you get to postseason, the adrenaline pumps up. Like I said, I'm literally sitting around my office this afternoon just waiting for the evening activities.
Yes.
And I'm sitting here and I can feel the adrenaline going, just sitting here in my office. Like, it's that kind of thing for Selection Sunday. Opening day is more, it's a thrill. You're ready for it to come back, but you know what's ahead. Selection Sunday, you know what's ahead, but what's ahead is the postseason. It's the, constant. I mean, it's softball constantly. And so for me, I think it's Selection Sunday. Now, that may be my personal self peeking in. I mean, it's very possible it could be.
It's going to be – I feel the opening day is like, okay, yeah, everybody's ready. But we kind of have an idea of who's going to make the postseason going into the regular season anyway. It's just a matter of, okay, what are the storylines that we're looking for? What players that we have to see, and what players are coming out of nowhere, coming from the backstretch, so to speak. Selection Sunday is we get the accumulation of everything we've seen. Now we find out which teams get in, which teams are going to be hosting, which teams are going to have potential matchups in super regionals, and whose path is going to be toughest to Oklahoma City. Now, one storyline that a lot of people are going to be talking about, Justin, and we're going to get to it right now. Arizona has a streak of making the NCAA tournament every year since 1986. Some people feel that the streak is in jeopardy tonight. We have Arizona on our bubble watch on Extra Innings Softball. Arizona is the last team in, as in Western Kentucky is the first team out. We're 10 minutes away, Justin, as I'm speaking. Do you have the Wildcats in the field of 64?
Got them in, but by the slimmest of margins. I mean, I think the one thing going for Arizona, and I said that I wrote this, I think I've written it twice, I've said it at least twice. Their resume is just kind of meh. I mean, their resume is just kind of, there's no big wins, there's no bad losses. Nobody else can say that. So again, going back to, I think the topic that was the first one we talked about tonight, of what's the committee's chosen metric?
Yes.
Is it big wins? Is it bad losses? Is it this? Is it that? Is it, I mean, that's the thing is, if the committee, prioritizes big wins, well, then a Western Kentucky is going to have an edge over Arizona because Western Kentucky beat Alabama.
Yes.
Well, if the committee prioritizes who had fewer bad losses,
they're going to prioritize Arizona.
Kentucky had a couple. Right, and Arizona did not. So I prioritized Arizona. So, I mean, we're talking about 64-65 there. Other teams have yays and nays in those same categories, other categories. But I think that's, again, where it comes back to the same topic of the committee's chosen preferred metric. They use a lot of metrics, but what's the deciding factor? And that's where I think Arizona's fate hangs in the balance. Just, I mean, they've got some things going for them. They didn't do well in conference. They did finish last in conference, but remember, last in conference, this is a tighter Pac-12 than normal.
Mm-hmm.
So last in conference, they still won 8 games. So, I mean, you're still talking about winning 1/3 of your games. Normally, last in conference for any conference is, not 1/3 of the games. So Arizona has that going for them too, in the sense that it's a tighter conference. I mean, if they make the field, they're going to jump the teams that finish 7th and 8th in the Pac-12 who aren't going to make the field.
Like a Cal, Utah, potentially Oregon
Right.
State.
Right.
It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting, Justin, in that you have teams like Texas and Arizona who may not have the resume, but they got the brand name. And you got teams like UCF and Western Kentucky who have the marquee signature win. So is it gonna be more about who's the most deserving, or is it going to be more about the brand name? And obviously 2 different scenarios with Texas, UCF, and Arizona, Western Kentucky, but kind of the same principle in terms of, do you go with the most deserving or do you go with the brand name?
No, that's exactly what it is, because I personally, I don't think the brand name is going to be as big of an ultimate factor. I think it is absolutely in Arizona's corner as a positive. Does the committee want to be the first committee to leave Arizona out of the tournament since 1987 or 1986? 87 was the first year they were in. That absolutely plays in and plays a factor. But to your point, I mean, I look at it and I see Arizona. There's no way you can see Arizona resume or anything. Like, you can look at a blind resume, that's great, but you can't look at Arizona and not see the fact that they're Arizona.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at Western Kentucky, since we're using those 2 as our argument here, Western Kentucky is Western Kentucky. It's a Conference USA school. Oh, well, they didn't win Conference USA. Oh, they only won the East Division. Oh, they got shellacked in the championship game. And it's just a natural thing because it's not Arizona. So I don't necessarily think it's a conscious thing that the brand of Arizona is going for them. But there's a certain extent where you can't avoid it. They're still Arizona. I mean, if UCLA ends up in the low end of the national seed, so 5 to 8, which I think is where they are and probably where they should be.
Yes.
People are going to say, oh, well, UCLA this, UCLA. But the thing is, UCLA can have a subpar year. For them, subpar is not winning the Pac-12, which they did. So, hey, congratulations, UCLA, you're subpar, and you're still going to be a top 8 seed. But that's part of it too. It's not a natural thing. It's UCLA. Okay, well, UCLA is really good. They only lost X number of games. They won this many games, so they belong up here. You don't necessarily look at them and say they belong here because they're UCLA, but the fact that they're UCLA, it's always going to come in somewhere. Arizona's the same thing.
Now, keep in mind, folks, we're about 6 minutes away from when the selection show is supposed to start. You got a baseball game going on right now on ESPN2. So do you see the baseball game getting bumped to ESPN News for the start of the selection show, which will be the right thing to do, ESPN, please and thank you in advance? Or do they bump the selection show to start on ESPN News? So we got drama already, Justin, before we even know a seed being announced.
I'm hoping that they've made some kind of, like, I don't have the audio on. Oh, okay. There's a commenter that says they are bumping it.
Yes, thank you, Nolan Carney, for giving us that update. We greatly appreciate that. So the baseball game is going to be bumped to news, and then the selection show will be starting on time, ESPN2, top of the hour. So thank you, Nolan, for keeping us up to date.
I hate it for the baseball fans, but you can't
bump. No, you know what this is? You know what this is? This is payback for baseball bumping Alabama, Florida in April for that stupid A-Rod cast on Sunday Night Baseball. This is payback for that. That's what it is. It is payback. It is comeuppance. Interesting question.
Okay, that's funny. True and funny.
True and funny, yes. Fabric 86 says, I want to see who's in FSU's region, OU's region, and Georgina Korg's region. Well, Fabric, depending on the how the brackets turn out, Georgina Korg may be in FSU's region. Steve B says, in the words of my guy Chris Plank, let's go. Go ahead.
Now, on South Florida, let's remember Lexi Johns, incredible base stealer. There is extra talent on that South Florida roster besides Georgina.
Yes.
Although she's obviously their leading lady, but just throwing out a little Lexi Johns shout out because she's really good. She's really fast. Obviously.
Yeah, the leading thief in stolen bases on college softball. Michelle Carlin with some thoughts. Appreciate Michelle, previous guest on the podcast, Justin. The Big Ten got squeezed last year. A lot of people felt that way. Northwestern was a 4 seed at Gainesville. Michigan having to travel to Seattle as a 2 to take on Washington. I feel the Big Ten is in a lot safer and stronger state this year than they were a year ago.
They're absolutely in a stronger state. They're being seen better. They're being treated better. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm in the camp of last year. I understand where the committee was coming from. I don't take issue with the committee for doing that. Now, you want to talk about Michigan to Washington, whatever, but I don't take issue with the committee only having 3 Big Ten teams. Big Ten people at Just Facts Me on Twitter, have your way, but I don't take issue with that. This year, though, you've seen the Big Ten not only be seen better, but the Big Ten is better.
Yes.
The teams are better. The play is better. You've seen Nebraska surge, Northwestern surge. Michigan's kind of been so-so. Minnesota and Wisconsin are there. Illinois is there. Ohio State is way better than I expected them to be. And so you've seen the Big Ten not just be seen better, but they've improved. And that, to me, changes more than the perception of the Big Ten ever could. So I think that's a really good point, because I think the Big Ten actually could end up ultimately being one of the big winners tonight when we get done with this bracket.
The Big Ten, they're projected to have 6 teams in the field of 64, which would double the number that they have from a year ago. Northwestern will be a national seed. It's always fascinating, Justin, as we're at 2 minutes from when the selection show will start. Who gets seeded in Northwestern's regional? Because if you remember in 2019, when Northwestern was selected as a host, they had Drake and they had Georgia as a regional team. And if I'm not mistaken, Missouri State snuck in as a 4 seed, which kind of stunned a lot of people as them getting in. You could see something similar this year. Like, let's say if Clemson hosts, if you see a Charlotte pop up in the bracket, that's bad news if you're Western Kentucky or Arizona, or potentially both.
Well, it was Southern Illinois who snuck in that.
Southern Illinois, thank you.
Yeah, and so, but to your point, yes. I mean, that's the thing when you get a bubble like this, and this is a great point to make right at the top of the hour as we're about to change over, is when you get to a bubble like this where it's not, okay, 5 very clear teams to make up 4 spots, and you know those 4 are going to come from that 5 teams. So somebody's going to get left out, but it's not like, okay, well, let's find a random team over here. The bubble this year is in such a place because of the Arizonas, because of the Wisconsins, because of the Minnesotas, the South Floridas, the Wichita States, the Texas A&Ms, the Charlottes, the Western Kentuckys. There's a lot of teams who could make an argument. And then, again, what point are we getting to? If, like you say, if you have a Clemson, you have a Duke, you have somebody who needs a seed, Charlotte's case is good. Okay, well, let's put Charlotte in. Their case is good. We need somebody here. Bam, done. That can happen. It doesn't make Charlotte's choice illegitimate, but that can happen.
Of course not. Of course not. It's 7 o'clock, folks, on the East Coast. Victor Anderson, Justin McLeod with you here on our In the Circle Selection Sunday live stream. A traditional like any other. This is the third year that we've done this. Well, actually, 4th year that we've done it. 3rd live on our YouTube channel. So I'm getting ready to settle in, get everything set up. By the way, make sure you follow us on our social media platforms. We will be doing a podcast tomorrow, which will be the best of our episode from tonight. So if you missed anything from tonight's episode, we will have it again for you in the podcast tomorrow. We will have D2 Tuesday. We'll talk about the D2 Super Regionals. Justin will be having an interview with the committee chairwoman at some point tonight. That'll be posted on extrainningssoftball.com. So make your plans for that accordingly. And it's a lot. We got a lot of things we're getting into. So
yeah.
So they're getting it.
Did anybody else just get another adrenaline rush when the selection show started, or is that just me?
Man, I'm ready. Look, I'm ready to go, bro. I am ready to rock and roll. Yes, Michelle Carlin. Here we go. Here we go, indeed. Here we go, indeed.
Exclamation points. That is definitely something that required more than one exclamation point. I like that.
Yes, three exclamation points minimum in regards to get ready to talk about Oklahoma City. So that's going to be fascinating to say the least. Now, we want to remind everybody we got a guest list of proportions coming up on our episode tonight. 7:45, less than 45 minutes from now, former Seminole pitcher and ACC Network Xtra analyst Caylan Arnold will be joining the live stream. Then at 8:15, Justin will likely exit for his interview. And then we will be joined by Andrew Haynes, Texas play-by-play man for Texas softball. By the way, no Beth Mowers tonight. If you heard our podcast Thursday, she was out due to illness. So Courtney Lyle is hosting the show with Amanda Scarborough and Michelle Smith. So want to wish Beth Mowers a speedy recovery. Hopefully we will see her back on the airways pretty soon. And then around 8:30, 8:45, Jennifer Sarah from the Pac-12 Network will be joining us as well. And again, depending on what the situation is with UCF, we may have Eric Lopez on the show and may have a few friends with him as well. UCF, the American regular season and tournament champions. So that is our potential guest list for this evening. Prepare yourselves accordingly and prepare ourselves for the revealing of the field of 64. Any final thoughts, Justin, on what we may potentially see before we get things started this evening?
Chaos. That's what I think we're going to potentially see.
Don't you mean mayhem? You mean mayhem, right?
Oh, no, I mean chaos. It's beyond mayhem.
Oh, touche.
It's just absolutely crazy. That's what I'm expecting.
Touche. I'm getting myself prepared because I want y'all to see my live reactions as I'm watching this selection show. Now, Justin may be slightly ahead of me with his TV, so if you see his reaction first, you guys are understanding why. And if you see my reaction first, well, I'm slightly ahead of him. And if we both had the same reaction, that means we're somehow synchronized, which is very interesting in this wild thing. All right, folks, here we go. Well, no surprise, Oklahoma, the #1 national seed. Well, duh.
I'm actually really shocked. I wasn't sure if that was going to happen that way.
Oh, come on. Stop it. Okay, so let's see who OU will face in there. So OU is the #1 seed. Interesting. So we got Prairie View A&M. Prairie View will be the 4 going to Norman. Congratulations to the Lady Panthers, the SWAC champs, knocking off Alabama State. This is going to be the first real interesting reveal. Woo, Minnesota. Minnesota going to Norman. Okay. The Gophers, and yep, wow. Texas A&M is going to Norman. That is great news if you're a UCF fan. That is great news if you're a UCF fan because two teams that potentially could host and could go to Austin, and Prairie View and Texas A&M are traveling to Norman. So if you're Sidney Ball Malone and company, that is great news for you. Great news.
Settle a little easier now.
Yes, a little easier now. But hey, Haley Lee and A&M did beat Alabama 2 out of 3. Granted, that was in College Station. So we'll see what happens here. The #2 national seed, Florida State. So they reward Florida State for winning the ACC tournament championship.
Well, not just the ACC either. Think about the top 10 wins Florida State's had through the year. Florida State is honestly a really solid #2 seed. You think about who they've beaten practically the whole top 10 at this point, except for Oklahoma.
How about it? By the way, congratulations to Tori Tyson and the Howard Lady Bison winning the MEAC championship, given all the circumstances that she had to deal with. And USF is going to Tallahassee, as a lot of people thought would happen. So congratulations to Ken Erickson and the Bulls making it into the tournament. Nice for them to get into the tournament. Last year they're in Gainesville. This year they will be in Tallahassee. Let's see who USF will play. Ooh, Mississippi State as a 3 going to Tallahassee.
For the record, I would like to note that the extra inning bracketologist Eric Lopez correctly picked those top 3 seeds, all 3 in the same regional.
Ding, ding, ding. That's
He's
why
not here, so I can brag on him a little bit.
Yes, Eric Lopez is not here to brag on himself, so Justin McLeod will do so on his behalf. So
being the publisher has its perks sometimes.
It certainly does. It certainly does. It certainly does. So, hey, our guest Caylan Arnold will have plenty to talk about when we have her on at 7:45 Eastern time. So, FSU takes on Howard and USF takes on Mississippi State. So they're going by top 3 order, and as expected, a 3 seed Virginia Tech. Congratulations to Pete DeMore. I had a chance to talk to Coach DeMore prior to the season. He mentioned that Keely Wilshire was in mid-season form going into the season, which was bad news for everyone else, and it'll help that he had a great offense, and if he found a freshman in Emma Lemley who will fill in nicely once Wilshire graduates. So Virginia Tech, the number 3 seed, which Mr. Lopez, as Justin said, correctly predicted, taking on the Red Flashes of St. Francis. And how about St. Francis, Justin? Jennifer Patrick Swift leaves to go to NC State, and that dynasty continues on, win that 5th straight NEC championship. Hey, one of our favorites, Miami of Ohio, Corinne Kumar and company. And I believe they're going to be the 2 seed in Blacksburg, back-to-back MAC champs. Carly Spade, the name to keep an eye out for, Carly Spade in Miami. They went to the regional final last year. Actually, Kentucky. Wow. Kentucky, a 2 seed.
For the record, I would like to note that Eric Lopez correctly picked 3 of those 4 teams in that same regional.
Hashtag, I believe he had that, will be the phrase that we'll be using this evening. Please tweet hashtag, I believe I had that in the chat accordingly for any predictions that you have right. By the way, extrainningssoftball.com, extrainningssoftball.com for the final bracketology for Eric Lopez. So let's see. The 4 seed has to be Arkansas, right? Yep, and it is Arkansas. So our resident bracketologist is 4 for 4. I mean, that's what he does, ladies and gentlemen. That's what he does.
And what you guys don't see is I've got paper in front of me, paper to the right, and 2 computer monitors in front of me. So
Princeton will be going to Fayetteville. Princeton, by the way, Princeton beating Harvard today in Game 3. They're the first team since the inception of the Ivy League Champs Series to win the title after losing Game 1. And Wichita State is going to boggle. Woo! Home runs are going to be flying out of that park, folks. And Oregon gets in as the 3 seed. Oregon is in. Oregon is the 3 seed. Oregon will take on Wichita State. Brother, offense. Ooh.
Y'all stop me if you heard this before. Eric Lopez, 3 out of the 4 in that regional.
Hashtag, I believe he had that.
Hey, I'm the publisher. I didn't pick the selections. I'm gonna brag all night if this keeps up.
And Justin, I don't believe you watch wrestling, but wrestling fans will get this reference. You are to Paul Heyman what Eric Lopez is to Roman Reigns. You are his special counsel. Okay, 5 seed. Wow, UCLA is a 5 seed. Wow. Our first real stunner of the night. UCLA a 5? In spite of not winning the Pac-12, not even a share of the title? Wow. They take on the Grand Canyon, the Lopes, making their first trip to the NCAA tournament in program history. Congratulations to Grand Canyon. Knocked off Stephen F. Austin to get to win the WAC championship. I have a feeling this is going to be either Loyola Marymount, so we're going to have a Bruin reunion. Congratulations, Terry Flowers, getting the Lions to their first ever NCAA tournaments. The Fighting Sam Fishers, as I like to call them. Let's see who they'll be taking on as the 2 seed. Oh wow, Ole Miss as a 2, going back to UCLA. The side where they had that super regional a few years ago. But The first real surprise, Justin, UCLA a 5 seed.
I'm sorry. I'm kidding.
Well, Michelle Carlin did say UCLA has an RPI of 5. So if they're gonna go by straight RPI, that's good news. That's good news. I can't say, I don't know right now because I thought Texas was in trouble when I saw Prairie View A&M and Texas A&M show up in Norman, but we shall see. Alabama's
3 out of the 4 on that one on UCLA.
Hashtag, I believe he had that. Bama is the 6th seed. Phil Esposito is kind of surprised like us. Not San Diego State not going to UCLA. It sounds like to me they're going to be going to Arizona State potentially.
It's got to be.
Let's see who's the 2 seed now. Let's see who's the 2 seed in Tuscaloosa. Alabama takes on Chattanooga, who bashed their way to the SoCon title. Murray State's the 3. The Racers winning another Ohio Valley Conference championship in a battle versus Belmont. Let's see who will be the 2. I'm telling you right now, Justin, if Alabama doesn't get their bats going, Stanford has a pitching staff that can shut down that lineup, and Alabama could be in trouble. So Stanford's the 2 taking on Murray State as the 3 in Tuscaloosa.
This is going to be a fun little bracket reveal, y'all.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
For the record, Victor's the radio guy. I'm not talking a lot because I'm a writer and I'm also bewildered. So just if y'all wonder, that's why.
You're befuddled. You're befuddled. Don't worry.
Befuddled's a great word.
Thank you. I don't know how many words that will be in on a Scrabble board, but that's I agree.
Mucho.
So let's see. So now, who's the 7th seed? Oklahoma State. So Parker Dickinson, I would think Wichita State would be the 3. Or Wichita State would be the 2 and Oregon the 3, but I don't know.
Wichita's got to be the 3.
Yeah, Wichita, yeah.
RPI.
Yeah, thank you, Parker. Parker bringing that up. Oklahoma State takes on Fordham. North Texas lost Hope Troutwine to the transfer portal, and then all they did was go host the Conference USA tournament, run through the tournament undefeated, and run rule Western Kentucky. So congratulations. And Nebraska's going to Stillwater. Interesting. Nebraska going to Stillwater as a 7 seed.
I think we know who 8's got to be at this point.
If it's Arizona, it has to be Arizona State. It has to be.
I don't see how you have a Pac-12 champion that's
but
not.
The fact that you had UCLA, who finished 2 games below Arizona State and lost to the Sun Devils head-to-head, I don't know. We're gonna see. We're gonna find out right now. So the number 8 national seed is Arizona State.
Well, there's your Pac-12 champion.
There you go. Lowest national seed ever for a Pac-12 champion. I'm sure Eric will confirm that if we do have him on. But at this rate right now, it's a pretty good chance we may have him on. So Arizona State, let's see. I can see Cal State Fullerton going to Tempe. I have to give credit to the selection committee, Justin. They're really switching things up a little bit. Usually we see Fullerton going to UCLA. They're going to Tempe this year. Or Marymount going to UCLA. And oh my goodness, San Diego State is going to Tempe. Let me see who, one of our friends somebody had that. I thought somebody had that. Oh, so let's see.
Lopez had that.
Eric, I believe he did have that. Let's see who Arizona. Woo! LSU. The committee did Arizona State no favors.
That's a tough regional.
You got San Diego State with Maggie Ballant, who set a record-winning Mountain West Pitcher of the Week 9 times, and you got an LSU team who, if they can ever get their bats and their pitching consistent, can challenge anybody. And remember, Arizona State was the national seed last year and got knocked off by Southern Illinois. That was the regional that Virginia Tech won and went on to Supers.
Yeah,
I agree.
That's a fun regional right there.
I agree. We agree with you, Michelle Carlin. So half of the field has been revealed. Well, Justin, we got some time to kind of digest what we say. Michelle Smith said we're gonna have a few surprises, and she wasn't lying. Oh, thank you, Michelle, for the correction. They got eliminated by BYU after losing to Virginia Tech in the opener. Thank you. They lost to BYU in the opener and then lost to Virginia Tech in the elimination game. Thank you, Michelle, for keeping me in line. We greatly appreciate that. Yes, Phil, time to catch our breath. Whew, time to catch our breath. Justin, that Tempe regional with Arizona State, Fullerton, LSU, San Diego State, that is going to be one interesting regional.
That's honestly a regional 3 teams could come out of.
Yeah.
Which, if we're going to be honest, is the exact same thing that was the case at the Tempe regional last year.
Yes.
So, I mean, apparently it's the Sun Devil lot in life, but that was the case last year, and it's the case this year. That's a regional where 1, 2, or 3 seed could come out of that regional.
Cal State Fullerton, they are known to give teams fits in the NCAA tournament. Remember, Fullerton forced it if necessary game with UCLA a few years ago. So that is gonna be a wild regional, to say the least. The biggest surprise for me, UCLA not only being ahead of Arizona State, obviously with the regional rankings, and Michelle brought up a very valid point in terms of UCLA, to have a better RPI and more top 50 wins than Alabama and Arizona State. So it sounds like the committee is valuing, at least with the top seeds, better RPI and a record against the top 50s. That's the reason they have UCLA, then UCLA, then Alabama, Oklahoma State, and Arizona State.
And there again, it gets into what metrics is the committee going to value the most. Conference championships is not that value; it's the big wins, which I mean is fair, but that's what that's telling us is that's the metric that's going to go by.
So if they're going by that logic, that's good news if you're UCF. That's great news. That's good news if you're Mizzou.
Yeah. And
if you're Texas, if you're Washington, you might be sweating a little bit.
No, that's going to be interesting. I'm taking in this bracket right now.
And it feels to me, Justin, and Fabric 86 brought this up. I feel OU. Look, Minnesota and Texas A&M, they can play, but it feels like OU has, I don't want to say an easier path to get to Supers than what they did last year, but there's not as much interference on their road back to Oklahoma City.
Yeah, there's no Wichita State.
No.
I mean, the thing about Minnesota is that's a bubble Big Ten team.
That got hot in the last couple of weeks.
Got hot in the last couple of weeks and had some really bad showings in the early parts of the season.
Mm-hmm.
That's a Texas A&M team that 9 or 8 times out of 10 you pitch around Haley Lee, and you're cooking with peanut oil, as we say here in the South.
Yes, or cooking with gas or grease or whatever.
Okay, we say peanut oil in my part of the South, I guess.
Hey, the points taken all the same, brother.
But that's the thing, though, is you pitch around Lee. Yeah, you've got the Trinity Cannons of the world in that lineup, and it's still a really solid offense. But Haley Lee is the cornerstone of that offense.
Oh, yes.
Wichita last year, you had how many hitters that you couldn't pitch around? Like that's the thing. Like, we were talking about OU earlier and leave it at the committee. I mean, they ended up turning that on its head about OU getting a team where they can say, "Hey, we gave OU a challenge." But at the same time, I mean, it's not the worst regional I've ever seen. I mean, the Prairie View A&M is very likely what you'd call the 64 seed, and you match them up with the number 1 overall. Like, that's completely fair. So, I mean, that's fair, even though it's probably going to be a 35-0 win for Oklahoma. But still, 1-64 matchup, and then Minnesota and A&M are both bubble teams, and yeah, it's an easy road for Oklahoma, but Haley Lee might hit a dinger. They might score 1 off of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I mean, something got something going for them, I guess.
Indeed. And now we're getting to that point where if you're a team like, because we still have Clemson, we still have Duke, the regionals to look for. If you're a team on a bubble, like a Western Kentucky, like a Charlotte, you gotta look at the Clemson regional, and you gotta look at the Duke regional. Those are the 2 regionals that you gotta look at. Well, if you want to see your name on the tournament, you gotta look at those 2 regionals.
One thing that's important to point out is the fact that the committee put Murray State as a 3 seed at Alabama.
Yes.
Murray State as a 3 seed, and I'm going to look it up as we speak where Murray State fell in the RPI. We have dead air here while
Exactly. Yeah, we're kind of in that intermission break right now. You see 94. Coming up. What was it?
94. That's a 94 team as a 3 seed.
Wow.
So that tells me that gosh, I don't actually know what that tells me. That was unexpected. I knew there were some teams that could have gone 3 or 4. Murray's a good team. I did not have him as a 3.
As a 3?
Yeah. So I mean, it's a 3 at Bama, but a 3 is a 3. So that's going to be interesting. That one speaks to me in a way I don't know what it's saying yet, because that actually took me very off guard when that popped up.
I think it kind of took everybody off guard, honestly.
But hey, Murray State got to 40 wins, won the regular season OVC title, tournament title. I mean, they got 2 really good pitchers. Here's the thing: that regional at Alabama is going to have some pitching.
Oh yes,
you got outs. You potentially have Kilfoyle. I mean, we don't know for sure. You got Murray State, who's got 2 really solid arms. You've got Stanford with Elena Vaughter, and Chattanooga's got Brooke Parrott as their ace. The so-called.
Oh, absolutely. Well, here we go. Number 9, that's Northwestern, the 9th seed.
You're rewarding the Big Ten.
So that means if the seeds hold up, you will have an Arizona State Northwestern Super Regional.
Yep.
And you got Oakland, as we anticipated, a Horizon League champs, making a trip to Chicago. The 2-3 seeds are always going to be fascinating with Northwestern. We highlighted them in 2019. They got Drake and Georgia. Let's see what happens here with the Evansville Regional. Get the lights ready. Someone call Mike Wilbon if he's not out in the desert. Ooh, McNeese is going to Evansville.
It's been a long time since McNeese has played outside of the confines of Louisiana and Texas.
Yes, so James Langino, congratulations to them. So they're going to be the 3 seed there, and see who's the 2. Notre Dame is the 2. Notre Dame is the 2 in Evanston, excuse me. I don't know why I said Evansville, excuse me.
I mean, it's up there too.
It's up there.
I'm going to tell you right now, though, I think Eric Lopez is going to be a very happy camper this evening, the way this is shaking out.
Well, he is at the UCF watch party right about 15 minutes away from where I am. So if UCF does host, which right now things are looking good, we will have Mr. Lopez and a potential few guests joining us during our selection show. We're going to see. Let's see who the 10 seed is. Clemson's the 10 seed. So Eric had this super regional right, except that he thought it was going to be in different seedings. So it'll be a potential Oklahoma State Clemson super regional. Now, this is the regional you got to watch for Charlotte and Western Kentucky. UNC Wilmington, congratulations to the Seahawks winning the CAA for the first time in program history. was dominant in the conference tournament, honestly, Justin. So
very much.
So here we go, 2-3 matchup. This is going to be where if you Louisiana is going to Clemson.
Didn't see that one coming.
Oh boy, Louisiana's going to Clemson.
Did not see that one coming.
And did you see Auburn going to Auburn going to Clemson? Makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, it does. Mr. Lopez predicted that.
Hashtag, I believe he had that. But no favors done for Clemson, and not good news right now for those of you who support Charlotte, if you support Western Kentucky, because that could have been busable. That was a busable location for those two schools. Got 6 more national seeds left to go. That's gonna. Oh man, it's getting thick. We're getting in the thick of it, Mr. McLeod. We're getting in the thick of it, sir.
You tell that to my palpitating heart.
Yeah, I will. Here we go. Number 11 national seed, Tennessee, the 11. So we have our first interconference super regional, where if the seeds hold up. Karen Weekly again. We had her on the show, Justin, talking about how she doesn't like those SEC versus SEC super regionals. Well, she'll have another one if she advances.
Yep. Ralph Weekly's spoken about SEC, all SEC supers longer than anybody I know. And Tennessee seems to be the one that's always in them.
Yep. They'll have to take on Sharonda McDonald and the Campbell Camels, winning the Big South for the 2nd straight year. Congratulations to them. Oregon State is in. Oregon State is in as a 3.
That's a lot of orange there on Rocky Top.
And the Ohio State is in the tournament. You were very high at Ohio State, Justin, and one of their transfers coming in and really making a difference for that program for the Buckeyes this season.
Oh, Lexi Hanley's arm is insane. And that offense at Ohio State has really exploded in the bottom 2/3 of the year ever since their spring break trip to Florida. Like, that offense has just really exploded. And so the combination of Hanley and that offense is going to be really interesting.
Yeah. But the thing is, Tennessee has a Ashley Rogers who is as healthy as she's been the entire season, her and Erin Edmondson. That could be the difference if Tennessee is able to advance out of regionals, unlike what happened last year when James Madison and Odyssey Alexander made that run to supers. Number 12 national seed, it is Duke. The Duke Blue Devils will be hosting. They'll actually be hosting this year, unlike last year. So we have a potential. Yes, at their home place. So congratulations to Marissa Young and company, getting to host it for the first time in program history. Excited for them to finally get a chance to host regionals. And let's see who they'll open up their tournament path against. The Retrievers, UMBC. Duke, they got a Coppersmith is someone you do not want to have a bad day with offensively, because she can shut down an offense.
That's true. And she's got a number 2 behind her who can pick up some innings, and Kaya Matter. That's a fun combo. Yep.
Dr. Don Richardson and the Liberty Flames make it in as the ASUN champs, so they are the 3 seed. Look, Liberty is a team that they have a lot of balance. And Georgia, wow. So they flipped. So essentially, they took what happened last year where Duke is the 1, Georgia's the 2, and Duke is hosting this year.
I'm going to be the bragging publisher again. Eric Lopez, 4 for 4 in that regional.
Ding!
In case any of y'all wonder why he's the premier bracketologist,
he is the GOAT when it comes to softball bracketology. Nobody's done it longer. Nobody's done it better than our colleague, Mr. Eric Lopez. Woo! Justin, Fabric 86, UMBC will beat Duke. You heard it here first.
I'm not going to say that he's wrong. Well,
that's not a bad pick, sir. That is not a bad pick, Fabric.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm on board with that, but I'm not going to disagree with it either.
Washington, the 13 national seed. So the Huskies will host and host rather comfortably, I might say. Now, don't be surprised if UCF doesn't host. They could be in Seattle as the high 2 seed. Washington will take on Lehigh in the opening round game in Seattle. So if you're UCF, you want to avoid seeing your name coming up in his next two lines. Weber State is in, the Big Sky champs, making it back to the tournament.
Top 50
Congratulations.
RPI.
Yes. So I saw that surprisingly high RPI for Weber State. Let's see. Weber State will take on Texas. Oh my goodness gracious. Texas is a 2. Texas is a. That yelling you heard just now was likely over at Island Wing Company where UCF is having a watch party, because that likely means unless somebody sneaks in the back door like a Washington or like a Notre Dame or a Michigan, I think UCF is hosting.
Yeah.
Because the big threat for challenging the host is a 2 seed and traveling to Seattle.
Well, let's remember whose name have we not heard called as
Florida. We haven't heard Florida. We haven't heard Missouri. We haven't heard UCF.
Florida's the one I was going for there.
Yeah, I think Florida will be the 14th seed. Yep. And as if on cue, Florida is the number 14 national seed.
Wonder if the
so they'll have a potential. Oh dear Lord. Dear Lord. I don't act. Everyone, please bow your heads. Dear Lord, please support UCF in Gainesville as a 2 seed. In Jesus' name, amen. Ben Cohen, there's Canisius. You asked for them. There you have them.
All right.
So Wisconsin's in. So the Badgers get in. Now, UCF, if you don't see your name here, I think you're good. This is the moment right here. This is the moment we're going to be looking. Georgia Tech is the 2. Georgia Tech is the 2 in Gainesville. So the schedule, ladies and gentlemen, in all likelihood, is going to get jumbled a little bit. We're still going to have Caylan Arnold at 7:45. We may have some guests from down the road at the top of the hour. Just saying. So this likely means UCF, Mizzou, potentially some people have floated around Michigan. By the way, Eric Lopez 14 for 14 in terms of picking regional host. Just saying.
I'm going to say this. Given who's left from the automatic qualifying side, I think our final 2 seeds are going to end up being UCF and Missouri.
The question is, which order?
Now,
by the way, Arizona has not shown up yet. Mizzou is the 15th seed. So Mizzou is the 15th seed. This is not good. So Mizzou is the 15th seed. Let's see who will going to Como. Let's see. You can tell we're getting very anxious here. Missouri State, not surprising. By the way, Eric Lopez had that.
Yeah.
South Dakota State should be the 3. We wait always anxious. Arizona sneaks in. Arizona State sneaks in. The streak continues. So who will be the 2? Illinois. So I think we figured out the final 4. It's going to be UCF. It's going to be Kentucky. It's going to be South Dakota State and somebody else. And Michigan. It's Kentucky. I'm sorry. So it's going to be UCF. It's going to be South Dakota State. It's going to be Michigan and then at large.
Villanova.
Thank you. We just figured out the final 4. The question is it going to be in Ann Arbor or is it going to be in Orlando? We figured out the final 4 teams. It's going to be UCF, Michigan, Villanova, South Dakota State. The question is, who's going to be the number 16 seed? And there it is, folks. There it is. UCF has made history. The Knights are going to host at the Plex for the first time in program history. Congratulations to Sydney Ball Malone and her staff. Jada Cody, American Conference Tournament Most Outstanding Player. The Knights get rewarded, and it will get rewarded with a Villanova team. We just had Bridget Orchard on the show earlier this afternoon. UCF needs to be ready. UCF needs to be ready because Villanova, they got some ball players led by Paige Rao. And as we anticipated, South Dakota State will be the 3, and then Michigan will be the 2, and will be traveling to Orlando to take on UCF. And ladies and gentlemen, that is your field of 64. UCF is in as a host.
Ladies and gentlemen,
did Eric Lopez go 64 for 64?
He nailed every dang team. He nailed every dang team.
Sherwin Brown, Eric Lopez is saying, acknowledge me. Yeah. Yes. We acknowledge the head of the bracketology table, the tribal chief, the undisputed, incontrovertible college softball bracketology champion, Eric Lopez. Woo! Bull Esposito, we acknowledge Eric. Yes. Yes. Man. So it is unbelievable. We bow to the greatness that is Eric Lopez.
For the record, different seeds, but he also nailed every host team.
Yes, he did. Nailed all 16 hosts. Got 64 out of 64. I mean, what more does he have to prove to show that he is the best bracketologist in the game? What more does he have to prove?
Nothing. I
What's the Kentucky? Yes. What's the Kentucky Dick
broadcast? So
yeah, I'm sure Eric will be having a lot to say, and I'm sure he'll be messaging us at some point to get us on. So, yep, CB, Eric Lopez is the head of the brackets. Acknowledge him. I mean,
your biggest snubs are, you're talking Western Kentucky, Charlotte, Boise State. True bubble teams. Honestly,
I don't see any glaring snub. The only issue I can take with the committee this year is having Arizona State behind UCLA. That's the only gripe. And Michelle called, and by the way, so Sandy Atkins just mentioned that the body of work was more impactful than head-to-head. So it shows me that the committee actually looked at the entirety of work that the teams did, and head-to-head didn't have as much impact. And Michelle mentioned earlier in the chat how UCLA had a higher RPI, more top 50 wins. Same you can say for UCF. The sign that UCF was in the right direction was when Texas showed up as a 2 seed in Seattle. Once that happened, UCF's chances to host shot up exponentially.
So the thing, as I'm looking at this, the body of work aspect of it, you can kind of see that manifested in more than just UCLA and Arizona State. You see it manifested, for instance, Florida State, Virginia Tech, 2-3. Yep. Florida State's got those extra top 10 wins against teams, a bunch of different top 10 teams. Virginia Tech doesn't have that. You've got it with UCLA, Arizona State. But then you look at the back half of the seeds. I mentioned that my thought about Clemson and Duke was Clemson's body of work was better. Well, Clemson seeded higher. You look at Washington, not great body of work as a whole. They're a low seed. Florida, not a great body of work, low seed. Missouri, body of work at the end, they sneak into seed, but again, an appropriate low seed play. So that's actually a really good comment because that you see that manifested even in just the seeds in more places than just the two Pac-12 teams, UCLA and Arizona State, that is. You see the body of work.
Yeah, and if you see, as we're pulling up right now, the full bracket, the final bracketology that Eric had on extrainningssoftball.com, you can see the work that he put in. Nailed all 16 regional sites. Yeah, the seeding was flipped a little bit, but he wasn't that far off.
And 2 perfect regionals where he picked all 4 teams.
Mm-hmm.
So just add that. I mean, he's not here, so we can brag on him to the
Well,
hills.
he's not here now, but he will certainly be here to
Well, we can deny we said it later on.
Yeah, exactly. He will be here to acknowledge himself at a later point in time. So, yeah, that's what we're looking at right now. Andrew Haynes with the I don't know about Texas being screwed thing. I'll ask our guest Andrew Haynes, who's in the chat. We appreciate Andrew hanging out. Andrew will be joining us at around 8:15 Eastern, 7:15 Central to talk about that. Oh, hey, Justin, somebody who I'm sure is very happy with what happened with the selection show and with her particular team. She's going to be joining us right now. She's covering the team for ACC Network Xtra, and knows a thing or two about playing for Florida State because, well, she played for them last year when they went to Oklahoma City. Caylan Arnold joining us in the live stream. Caylan, good evening to you. How you feeling?
I'm great. You're right. I am super excited with where my alumni school ended up. They are number 2. I'm super happy about it, so I feel good.
I mean, you saw this team a lot this year, and I feel watching this team from your team last year, Michaela Eddingfield has made such a difference for this offense, adding that power element, adding a tremendous play behind the backstop. Has she made that big of a difference for Florida State, and that's why they're number 2 nationally going to the tournament?
I definitely think that Michaela has made a big impact. I wouldn't say that, she's the only reason why that they've made it this far in the tournament. I do think that she's made an impact, though. She, created a big body behind the plate. She also came in hitting 16 home runs, becoming, second team all ACC on the top 25 and top 10 NFCA National Freshman of the Year list. So she definitely has made a big impact. But I mean, if you look at the other players that, the Florida State coaching staff brought in outside of Michaela coming in after her redshirt year, like Mac Leonard. I mean, look at what Mac Leonard did yesterday in just the ACC tournament, coming in, starting, and then hitting the winning home run, so that they could win the championship. I think Mac Leonard has made such a big impact and an impact in the circle. I mean, she kind of, she took my spot a little bit. She came in and she did what she had to do, and she kind of started out as a closer, and now she's become a starter as well. You look at Kaylee Harding. I mean, Kaylee Harding has come alive towards the end of this season. I mean, she has absolutely done a phenomenal job. And then Devin Flaherty. Devin Flaherty has been consistent the entire year. There was an interesting comment made during the game that when you get to Devin in the lineup, it's almost like another leadoff because she is so consistent and she does almost always get on base. And, she's not a huge home run hitter. She does hit home runs. She has that power, but consistently she's hitting those line drives. And then she, in my opinion, is one of the best base runners I've ever seen. And then honestly, Sydney Sherrill, you look at her and you look at what she's done defensively. She's, the best defensive player in the nation. And then her bat has come alive as well. So, and then the pitching, I could keep going on. Obviously, I love this team. The pitching staff.
Please. You had the floor. Go right ahead, please.
Yeah. Catherine Sandercock, what she has done, her record is absolutely insane. Her ERA, going into the game was a 1.5. So she has just been such a leader for this team, in my opinion, because of that consistency. And, they interviewed, Holly Rowe interviewed Coach after the announcement for the selection show and stuff. And Kat's a 29 game winner. And she kind of asked Coach, like, what has she done, really to get to that point? How has she become so successful for this team? And Coach just said she has a great relationship with her defense. She trusts her defense. Kat has been able to add in that rise ball, but earlier in the season and in last year's season, she was predominantly a drop ball pitcher. And you have to be able to trust your defense when you're a drop ball pitcher, because it's going to be, a lot of ground balls, a lot of low in the zone pitches. So you got to be able to trust your defense. And she's a studier of the game. I can 100% attest to that, because I actually lived with Kat while I was down there, and she was constantly watching film, constantly talking with Coach about game situations, wanting to know what she could do to be better. And she's very competitive. I can also attest to that. She is very, very competitive. And so, she comes out and the team just rallies behind her because they know that she's going to go to battle for them.
Are you surprised that one quick question, I'll let Justin ask this next. Being around Kat as much as you have when you were a teammate, what specifically about her that makes her such a great competitor? Because you see her smiling. She seems so calm when she's pitching. And then next thing you know, she has that electric stuff. And of course, you mentioned the addition of the rise ball this year. What's the one thing that you've seen from Kat that has really taken her to that next level this season?
Right. Kat and I, we're very, very close friends as well. And it is true, like, not only does Kat trust her defense, but she creates relationships with every single person on the field, every single person in the dugout. That no matter what, she is there for you, and she's excited for your success. Even as, another pitcher, like, a lot of times people ask, oh, is there competition between the staff? And yes, there's competition between the staff. Ultimately, you want to be the one out there pitching, but at the same time, we were so happy for each other's successes. And, Kat she's a phenomenal teammate. She's a great leader. And I think that that's really what has taken her to the next level, is that she's taken on that leadership role. And usually you don't see that from a pitcher. You see that from like a shortstop, second base catcher. But Kat has taken on that role as a pitcher. And it's been so fun to watch her grow and to see the addition of that rise ball. It's made her that much more dangerous, because now she can throw on two planes, and she works really hard. She has a facility at her house that her dad built her. I don't know if you have seen it. It's pretty nice. So, she goes home and she throws to her dad. She's just constantly working and constantly trying to get better.
Okay, so Caylan, we've seen this Florida State team a lot, and you've seen them more than any of us. We've seen them play teams like Alabama and a bunch of the top 10 teams and win against most of them. What is it about this Florida State team? You know the culture. You've seen this team this year specifically. What is it about this team that just when they get in those games against top-level opponents that they're just so dang good?
I think it's the culture that the staff at Florida State creates. They recruit girls who they see fight inside of those girls. And that's honestly, like, when I look at this Florida State team and I look at the team last year, it was all about the fight. It's different this year because this team does have a little bit more power in the lineup. And, like with the big bats and the home runs, last year's team didn't have that, but it was still a scratch and claw and do whatever you have to do to win. And that's what this team is all about. And I think that, a lot of the players from last year's team brought that into this year's team and kind of rallied the freshmen and said, hey, this is what we're all about. We're about the fight. Coach Alameda has, a saying that we bend, we don't break. Nothing is ever going to break us. We're just going to keep fighting. And then also just really having fun. And I know that that's so simplistic, but you've got to enjoy where you're at. You have to be where your feet are, and you have to enjoy being with the people to your left and to your right. And that's something that Coach Alameda really tries to instill in us. Before the World Series last year, you get to practice on the field. And after practice, she had us all just kind of take a deep breath. And she was like, just look around, look at where you are. you're at the Women's College World Series in this huge stadium. Like, enjoy every single moment. She said, I don't care, what happens tomorrow. All that matters is that we're here and we're enjoying and we're having fun with each other. And so, I think that really sets this team apart.
And the fact that you were so close last year to winning the championship, going to Game 3 with Oklahoma, how much does that serve as an extra motivating factor for this team and coach as they start their trip back to unfinished business and bring home a second national title to Tallahassee?
Right. There's definitely, it does spark a fire in those girls. And, Sydney Sherrill was a part of the team that won it in 2018. So she knows what it's like. She wants that national championship. Last year, we were so close. I do think, that we were exhausted. If you ask the girls, when we got to Game 3, we were just so tired, and I'm really glad that the committee decided to add on those extra 2 days. I think that's going to make a big difference for the girls. But there's some fire. You want to win a World Series, you want to bring that back and that trophy back to Tallahassee. And I think too, something else is that the girls want to win it for the coaches as well, because they respect the coaches, they love them, and they want to play for them. So at the end of the season, seeing the emotion on coach's face, that was the worst part of it all. I was upset, yes, that we lost the World Series, but I was even more upset seeing the emotion from Coach and hugging her at the end and knowing that I wasn't going to get to play for her anymore. That was the biggest thing for me. So I think that, the girls really just want to do it for each other, and they want to do it for her.
Definitely. And I know you've really stayed with their teammates being involved in finding Sunday Goals and Company, really getting involved kind of in that NIL movement. What was the inspiration behind that, and what things did you have possibly in line in terms of getting these athletes set up for that success?
Right. So there were a few things that went into this idea. So I started working for a store when I moved back home. I live right outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, in a really small town called Maryville. And there's a store there called Orange Mountain Designs. And since 2008, they have sold gear for the Tennessee Lady Vols. And so when the NIL became a thing, they started selling NIL gear. And I was like, this is so interesting. I want to be a part of this so that I can give back to Florida State and to everything that they've done for me. And so my first shirt was the Legacy shirt. And originally what I was going to do was just going to do that shirt. I was going to take, part of the proceeds from that, donate it back to the program, and then just kind of move on. And but it took off, and the fans got really excited about it, and they wanted more. And I was like, okay. And so then I started adding on the girls. And so I have Sydney Sherrill, Michaela Edenfield, and Catherine Sandercock. Sydney's shirt is the Area 24 shirt. Michaela has her Area 51 shirt. And then Kat, I am actually releasing her shirt this week. It should be ready on Tuesday or Wednesday. But hers, it's a really interesting, it's a different color than all the other shirts. And it's got her silhouette on it and her name and her autograph and her number and things like that. So I'm really excited about it. And it's been great being able to give back to the girls and to the program and to help them grow their brand. Ultimately, that's the biggest thing that I want to do, is I want to be able to help the girls and make some money. I know, because it's really hard. I know as an athlete, not being able to work, not having the time to have a job, and save any kind of money. You come out of college and you're just like, well, I got my degree. Now what? I'm broke. So I got to move back in with my parents. So just being able to help these girls kind of get a head start and do whatever they got to do is it's really rewarding.
And you're seeing some of the offerings on the website, and you heard Caylan say they have a new Kat Sandercock shirt coming up this week. SundayGoldsCO.com. That's the website you need to go to get all your gear in terms of supporting these tremendous athletes. And of course, they wear gold on Sundays, or usually important games of series. That's the reason why the company is called that. So in case you don't follow Florida State that much, that's the reason behind it. So Caylan, what do you have now? I know we haven't talked about this yet. You haven't know if it will be the case or not. Are you going to be potentially involved with the broadcast for ESPN, or is that still something that's kind of being finalized right now?
So I'm done this year with broadcasting. but it is what I want to do ultimately for the rest of my life, or as long as they'll let me. I love doing it. I love talking about softball, and I love being involved in the sport any way that I can. So that's what I would like to do. I'm waiting basically to get all of my video and things like that of my experience. I'm going to create my reel and then send it to networks. Hopefully they hire me. If they don't, then I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, working for ACC Network Xtra, and also trying to get in with other schools as well, closer to where I live. So maybe, there's David Lipscomb, who we played this past season. There's UTC, Georgia Tech is in Atlanta. That's not too far from me. So I'm going to try and branch out and try to get a little bit more experience if I don't get hired right away. But ultimately, broadcasting is what I would like to do.
Hey, hire Caylan Arnold. She gets our seal of approval. Hire Caylan Arnold. We're just going to say that right now.
Yeah.
Well, Caylan, I know you got another podcast you could be jumping on to shortly. Thank you so much for your time this evening. All the best of your Seminoles, and we continue success with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Caylan Arnold, ladies and gentlemen, glad to have her on the podcast this evening. And Justin, I know you got a couple things you got to talk about before you have a talk with the committee chairwoman. Your thoughts on Florida State and the draw that they have on their trip, on their hopefully return trip back to Oklahoma City and try and finish where they started?
I mean, I like Florida State's draw. You got the familiarity of Cork and South Florida. They know what they're doing. Like they've faced Cork. They know South Florida. That's going to be an interesting matchup should South Florida beat Mississippi State. Now, if Cork, for some reason, is under the weather or whatever it is, I mean, we'll see what happens there. If Cork doesn't go, it's a whole different story. But if Cork's healthy, her against Florida State could be interesting. I mean, there's some of these regionals that are going to be pretty interesting by the end of it. They're going to be pretty interesting.
They are. I'm fascinated to see how these regionals play out, and it's just going to be – I'm looking forward to seeing it. We're kind of digesting everything, and before making our predictions and our picks. But we have a lot on our plate, Mr. McLeod, and I know you got an interview with the committee chairwoman that you got to get to, so we will let you go with that, and hopefully we will talk to you later on this evening on the live stream.
All right. And
we'll talk to you. We will talk to you then, Justin McLeod from Extra Innings Softball. So myself, Victor Anderson, hanging in with you. Still got a lot to talk about. Coming up at 8:15 Eastern Time, Andrew Haynes from the Longhorn Radio Network will be joining us. Texas going out to Seattle as the 2 seed there. And we are confirmed, 8:30, Jenna Becerra from Believe in Softball and Pac-12 Network. She will be joining us to share her thoughts about the Pac-12 and Arizona keeping their streak of making the tournaments alive. They have made the tournament every year since 1987. So Arizona, it took a little longer than expected for them to see their name on the draw, but they got it in. That's the important thing that matters there. Now, a lot of people are mentioning about the comments made by Patty Gasso. We didn't get a chance to talk about it when we had Caylan on the episode. Let's get to some of those comments right now. Fang Nai said, day-to-day is not good. I'm preparing for life without Jordy Ball this postseason. Eric, Justin, and I talked about this a little bit last night. Ball in the circle with May and Troutwine, Oklahoma is an absolute lock to make it to the national championship game and potentially win it. Oklahoma without Ball, they're still a tremendous team. They will still be the favorite. Would it be a stone cold lock? Probably not. But let's not underestimate Hope Troutwine. Top ERA in the sport, got extended time this weekend in the Big 12 tournament, and knows what it's like to be the number one. She was the number one in North Texas and helped pitch Lonnie, was her claim to fame, had the perfect game a couple of years ago, last year, before she transferred into Oklahoma. I'm not concerned about the pitching as much, but if the game versus Oklahoma State on Saturday gave us any indication, it's going to put a lot more pressure on Grace Lyons, Jocelyn Allo, and that very potent offense to kind of pick up the slack if they don't have Jordy Ball in the circle. Now, Fabric 86 says Fabric 86 thinks that Ball is done for the year. I certainly hope that's not the case. Hopefully, Oklahoma can get to Super, perhaps to Oklahoma City, excuse me, and get Ball there. But if they don't have Jordan Ball for an extended period of time, it's going to be interesting. Jesse James 94 says the tone of her voice definitely changed talking about the status of Ball. Optimistic day to day, going to wait on the doctors. Well, when you had wide range of outcomes, so it could be something where she could be available for regionals if they needed her. It could be a situation she could be shut down for the season. We certainly hope that's not. We certainly hope that's not the case. Looks like Steve B gave us some information. Got hurt in the Friday game when she came up versus Oklahoma State. Woke up the next day with tightness and soreness. So that's kind of the situation there. By the way, we are reaching out to Eric Lopez to see if he could join us right now. Looks like the answer is going to be no for the time being, but in the off chance he can hop on, he will. But for the record, it is needless to say, it's a very celebratory tone and mood over at the UCF watch party, which is literally about 15 minutes away from where I'm at the undisclosed location. So make with. Well, I had a blonde moment. Whoops, my fault. Courtney, thank you, Fabric. Courtney Coppersmith from UMBC leads the nation in ERA. Thank you. That's why we have people like y'all to correct us when we step out of line. Jonathan India, I'm presuming is not the NL Rookie of the Year. Jonathan India, just someone who likes him or maybe has a similar name. Which regionals would you put on upset alert? Definitely Tempe, because you're looking at a Tempe regional where you got rich pitching. You have an Arizona State team who now has the added pressure of not only hosting again, but being a top 8 seed. What I will say though is if Arizona State has a chip on their shoulder simply because they hosted last year, went 0-2 barbecue, losing to BYU and Virginia Tech. So I think Trisha Ford and company have that extra motivation to get themselves a little further along than what happened last year. So, but Arizona State, that is still a very, very dangerous regional in Tempe with what the Sun Devils have. UCF's regional in Orlando, they got Villanova, who won the Big East Championship for the second year in a row. We had Bridget Orchard in our preview show earlier this afternoon. That's going to be fascinating how that opening matchup can play out. Then you got Michigan and South Dakota State. Michigan, South Dakota State, you got Tori Connect from South Dakota State and Alex Storako from Michigan. That could be the best 2-3 pitching matchup in the opening game of the regional. That could be the best pitching matchup in terms of like 2 versus 3. If you want other seeds, I don't see any potentially. One, I'll give you a deep one. I'll give you a deep one here to kind of please everybody. If Charisse Delfs has an off game for Arkansas and they're in a winner's bracket game and they're playing Wichita State, because Wichita State, yeah, Sydney McKinney, who was on the finalist list for USA Player of the Year. And then you have Addison Barnard, who will likely be the first player in college softball history to have 30 home runs and 30 stolen bases in the season, and somehow was not on the top 25 finalist list, which we have ranted and railed about for episodes on end. If you hear our podcast, you know how much we are fans of Addy the Batty for Wichita State. Wichita State, and they found some other pieces behind those two before they got knocked out by USF in the semifinals in the American tournament. I think Illinois, now I'll say this, Illinois has marquee wins in the preseason. They beat Arkansas. They beat LSU. So Illinois and Tyra Perry are not going to be afraid of anybody that comes their way. So if I'm Mizzou, I would be a little careful because you'll take care of business against Missouri State. I will be careful with whoever comes out of the Illinois-Arizona game and that winner's bracket game, particularly if it's Illinois with the border battle for a spot in the regional final in Como on the line. So a lot of people talk about sources about the ball status. Well, until we get confirmation on the situation with Jordy Ball, we're not going to address it. We're just going to go on what we have here. Oh, Jonathan says Stanford in Tuscaloosa. Stanford has 3 great pitchers, and if it's only Montana Fouts having to go in the regional, I think she can get it done. I'm concerned about Alabama's offense going 1 and done in the SEC tournament and how they kind of scuffle down the stretch. Stanford has the pitching. And remember, Stanford made it to a regional final last year in Fayetteville, and their offense with Jessica Allister is a lot deeper than it was last year. They beat UCLA in the series, beat Arizona State. So Stanford is going to be that's a very nice observation by you. Very nice observation by you, Jonathan. And I see a lot of people agree with you in that particular sentiment. Parker Dickerson, he likes Texas's offense versus Gabby Plain, especially if Plain is the only arm working for Washington. The biggest thing essentially is going to be, we know Washington has Gabby Plain, and we don't know who's in the number 2. Likely going to be Pat Moore. We probably presume Gabby Plain will be making every pitch. Particularly, they'll say what Heather Tarr did last year, and I wouldn't be surprised if she did this again this year, is she sat Gabby Plain in their opening game and used Gabby Plain when they took on Michigan and pitched her again in the regional championship. I wouldn't be surprised if Pat Moore started for Washington versus Lehigh, and then you save Gabby Plain for what you presume will be a matchup in Texas in the winner's bracket. But Weber State, they have some potent bats, so let's not assume that will be the case. Well, we'll talk to Andrew Haynes about that when he comes on with us in about 7 minutes time here on our live stream. Again, 8:45, we will have Jenna Becerra around 8:30, 8:45, we'll have Jenna Becerra from the Pac-12 Network to give her thoughts on the Pac-12 and my opinions about that. A lot of people jumping on the Stanford bandwagon. Phil Esposito says if Stanford can shut down the Bama Bats, they're a lock. Very fascinating to say the least. Now, I'm not. Now, here's one. I will say that it will happen. But Nebraska, with Billy Andrews and that run that they've made to the Big Ten Tournament Championship, I think they can give Oklahoma State some trouble. But if Miranda Ellis is healthy and can pitch the way she pitched before she got lifted out of the game towards the end of the regular season and can pitch anywhere close to the Miranda Ellis that she was at Texas, then Oklahoma State can make it back to Oklahoma City easily because they'll get out of their regional and then likely will take on Clemson in the Supers. Now, one regional I'm surprised that a lot of you haven't mentioned, the Clemson regional, because you got Clemson, UNC Wilmington, and then you got Auburn and Louisiana in the 2-3 matchup. Maddie Penta and that Auburn pitching staff versus those very potent Raging Cajun bats. That's going to be interesting how that's going to play itself out in terms of can Auburn's pitching limit that very dynamic Louisiana offense. And it will be very fun to see how things happen in Clemson, South Carolina. A lot of people talking about what Washington's strategy should be in terms of pitching-wise. Sherwin chimes in, Pat Moore game 1, Lynch for the second, and then playing versus Texas. So now I agree with you. Pat Moore will pitch probably versus Lehigh because you don't – now, if the game is close, then you can bring in Plain to get the save, and then you have Plain start from here on out. Rob Stifler with a different concept, Plain, Lynch, then a steady diet of Gabby. Well, we shall see what happens there. One gentleman who will get to see it up close and personal joins us now, the radio voice of the Texas Longhorns, Mr. Andrew Haynes. Andrew, good evening to you, sir. Very interesting night, to say the least, in terms of your team with Texas and the whole selection process as a whole, sir.
I was going to say, is it a good evening? Are you sure about that?
Certain people is a good evening. Some people, not so much.
I guess Eric Lopez is probably over the moon at this point. Congratulations to him.
Over the moon, the planet, the stars, and I don't know if I can get him down in time to do the podcast on Thursday. I'll be working on that after we get done with our live stream. But
fair enough.
But the big thing, I think, with now obviously with you with Texas, talk about hosting. Obviously, you had the resume win with Oklahoma, but now that's all done with. Focus is back on the postseason. You get sent to Seattle. You got a very pesky Weber State team in the opening game, and then with the lurking possibility of Gabby playing in Washington in a winner's bracket game, just your initial thoughts on this regional in Seattle.
Yeah, I've thought for a while that if Texas ended up in number 2 and having to travel, then whoever was the regional host is in trouble. Texas, Mike White thought that he had locked up a hosting position. And so it'll really be interesting. Washington is a little down from their normal. Weber State's interesting and a fun little tie for me. I actually used to broadcast baseball in Ogden, Utah, where Weber State's located. He broadcasted for their minor league team for a couple of years. So a little familiarity with me with knowing that area a little bit. But it looks like an interesting one. And the Longhorns have been up and down this season. I mean, beating Oklahoma, losing 17-3 to Baylor, losing to Florida Gulf Coast earlier this year. Don't know what you're going to get, but I would imagine that Texas is going to bring a little bit of a chip on their shoulder for sure.
I feel that in terms of pitching, it's likely going to be Haley Dolcini who's getting the ball. And this is the region that you kind of brought Haley in, transferring from Fresno State to be in these types of positions, pitching your way into the tournament and trying to get yourself potentially for a shot at super regionals. And she's pitched well this year. She's been the most consistent pitcher on your staff by far. I remember we talked to you about that when we had you on previously. How important will be Haley Dolcini to how far Texas can go in the postseason this year?
Yeah, I mean, she'll be the key. They might look at starting someone else for Weber State. They might look at, keeping Haley in reserve and, seeing if they can get through Weber with someone else. And if that is the case, then a fully rested Haley Dolcini is going to be just impossible for Washington. Not impossible, but very difficult for Washington. If they do go with Dolcini against Weber State, they still have a chance with her against Washington. She's pitched, 2 out of 3 times in conference play most of the last month and a half or so. And so, she's definitely, when she's on, as you've seen, she can beat number 1. She can beat the best offense in the country, shut them down on one blue pit for 6 innings before her offense gives her a little breathing room and she lets up just a bit, allows a 2-run home run. That's what happened in that OU game. But, if she's on, she's one of the best pitchers in the country. Last year in the regionals for Fresno State, she nearly beat UCLA when they went down there for the regional Los Angeles. And I don't expect her to lose things, just completely fall apart here, I'm pretty sure that she's going to be one of the top pitchers anywhere you watch this coming weekend. And if she's on her game, then Texas can, go far.
I think a lot of people kind of felt the same thing with what Washington could do with that potential matchup with Texas looming, thinking about probably starting Pat Moore and saving Gabby Plain for that showdown with the Longhorns. So I'm really fascinated about both aces possibly not pitching the opening game and saving each other for that winner's bracket game, which is all, as you know, Andrew, is always a dangerous proposition because you may have to bring them in earlier than anticipated if you want to survive and get to that Saturday winner's game in the first place.
So 2019, Mike White's first year here at Texas, they played Sam Houston State for their first game and didn't start Miranda Elish and had a 1-0 lead in the 6th inning and allowed a 2-run home run, lost that game, had to fight back through the loser's bracket. Elish pitched through every pitch the rest of the regional, all 4 games, and got him through. But yeah, that's absolutely a possibility. And that was against a 4 seed in a regional. So against a 3 seed in a regional, it's even more of a possibility.
Your thoughts overall on the bracket as a whole? I mean, I felt the selections committee did one of the best jobs overall in quite some time in terms of seeding teams, in terms of where they were placed. Maybe my biggest gripe was UCLA over Arizona State, despite the Sun Devils winning the championship. We've talked about that ad nauseum before you came on. Yeah. What was your biggest observation from the selection show tonight?
That they got creative. They weren't sending the usual teams to the usual places. Finally getting some teams, some different opportunities. What is it? Fullerton heading down to Phoenix, I think, or to Tempe.
Fullerton going to Tempe, yes.
Yeah. And, some other situations like that. I'll admit, I was watching your stream while doing some other things, didn't make the Texas selection show, but it cut out right in the 6-7 area. And so I never found out who those were. And I assume, Oklahoma State's there and, North Texas probably going to them or something like that. But when it was going on, not knowing that those 2 seeds, the 6-7 seeds, I was, and not knowing that a couple different Texas teams hadn't been named yet, I was like, well, there's a couple of chances up in there for, teams to head to Texas still. And then I realized that it was getting too late and we're probably done. But no, I do think they did a good job overall. I do think they made a mistake in not giving Texas a host. I think Texas had one of the 16 best resumes in the country. But I guess, they maybe part of the being creative was realizing that they had no one to host in Texas and Louisiana. And so they had to send people everywhere else from these 2 states. And they had to, start to do things differently.
I think watching the bracket when I saw Prairie View and Texas A&M show up in the Norman Regional, that got my ears up right away. I'm like, is Texas going to host after all? Because those are normally stalwarts you see travel to Austin, particularly A&M. So seeing them early on the board, you're like, okay, does that mean Texas is going to host still and they're going to send somebody else?
Yeah,
it was interesting kind of watching that play out live when it was happening.
For sure.
Now, Andrew, I know we gotta let you go because you got a lot of things. You gotta pack for a trip to the Northwest, my friend.
Yeah,
so I know
I'll work on it Wednesday.
You will, and of course, you can catch all the games for Mr. Haynes on the Longhorn Radio Network. They will have the links up available, and make sure you catch his work. He does phenomenal work, and we're certainly glad to have him on a live stream. Andrew, thank you so much, sir, for the time, and safe travels to the Pacific Northwest, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Victor.
Andrew Haynes joining us, the voice of the Texas Longhorns, joining us on our live stream. We actually got the brackets up, so we're gonna share that right now and kind of give our thoughts on the field of 64. By the way, still to come, we're gonna have Jenna Becerra from the Pac-12 Network. She's going to be joining us in about 15 minutes or so. So we're going to try and get that. We're going to try and get that finalized here. I'm going to try and do some fun camera work to see how it will go. So you might hear me twice potentially, so I apologize in advance.
Oh, here we go. Let me move myself here. Oop, had an echo there. Okay, there we go. All right, so you see the bracket, and it's very fascinating with how the bracket kind of played itself out. We're going to go there larger to get everybody up to speed. So you see Oklahoma's the number one overall seed. You got Prairie View, Minnesota, and Texas A&M. I mentioned it earlier with Justin. When I saw Prairie View and A&M show up in Oklahoma's regional, that was kind of the first sign to me that Texas was not going to host. That seeing those two schools show up in Norman, Oklahoma, were usually stalwarts in Austin. Then you see UCF. They were the last national seed, number 16 seed. No offense, that was not a fire alarm. That was an echo that I had. But I was on different. I was on essentially two different streams at the same time, so I had a little feedback on the original one. But I'm back on to what you're seeing right now. So got that taken care of. Yeah, we're gonna have Jenna joining us in the next 10 minutes or so to talk about. No, Steve, fire alarm Vic is not back. For those of you who are new to our live stream, first of all, welcome. Second of all, last year I was in Oklahoma City, and while I was doing one of my live streams with Eric Lopez, I believe we had Christy Fox from UNLV on at the time. A fire alarm went off in the hotel that I was staying at. So from that point forward, I have been deemed or christened Fire Alarm Vic. Thankfully, it was not Fire Alarm Vic tonight. It's a Feedback Vic. How about that? Feedback Vic. We'll call it that. So UCF hosting, and Justin and I kind of figured it out after we saw Mizzou show up. We figured it would be UCF, South Dakota State, Michigan, and Villanova. The only question is, would it be Michigan hosting or UCF, and obviously the Knights, as the chairwoman Atkins said, due to the overall body of work, UCF gets the nod as the 16th seed. Northwestern, you see, is the 9 Big Ten regular season champs. They will be having Oakland in the opening round matchup, and then Notre Dame, McNeese in the 2-3 matchup, and then Arizona State, which I think that's the toughest regional, and I'm sure we'll talk to Jenna Becerra from Pac-12's from the Pac-12 Network, I believe, in softball later on in the evening, which will be within the next 10 minutes, about Arizona State, because I think the Sun Devils got a raw deal. Now you have the regular season champion. Not only you don't have them as a top 5 seed, you have the team that is ahead of them as a higher seed in Arizona State is 8. But as Michelle Carlin brought it up, what Chairwoman Atkins said, they awarded teams for more of the head-to-head than they did awarded teams more of the body of work than the head-to-head. Des Fang was great live content. Thank you. We greatly appreciate that. Speaking of UCLA, you see them as the 5 seed. You got Grand Canyon, Loyola Marymount making the tournament for the first time in program history. Terrier Flowers. They win a share of the West Coast Conference Championship, but by virtue of them beating BYU in the regular season, they got the tiebreaker, and as a result, they got the automatic bid. West Coast Conference does not have a tournament. That's the reason Loyola Marymount got the bid, and then Ole Miss as the 2 seed, a kind of a recall to an Ole Miss travel to UCLA. I believe it was 2017 when Ole Miss, with that Roman Caitlin Lee, got to host, made it to Super Regionals, and lost to the Bruins in Supers. And then Duke as the 12 seed. Duke has a sneaky tough regional. They got a Coppersmith from UMBC who can shut down any opponent, leads the nation in ERA. And then you got Georgia Liberty, a 2-3 matchup. Georgia has a lot of bats, but they don't have much pitch. The pitching has been inconsistent at times. And they got a Liberty team I follow along with in the A-Sun tournament. The Flames and Dr. Don Richardson, they are a very strong team. If Parker Dickerson asks, question, is Northwestern the weakest regional? We'll have to evaluate all 16 to see if that's the case. But maybe Oklahoma's potentially is weakest. We'll definitely get into that later on in our episode, especially on Thursday when we make our predictions for the tournament. You see the Washington bracket, which we broke down with Andrew Haynes. You see Texas as the 2 seed taking on Weber State, Washington to take on Lehigh. And then Arkansas, the SEC regular season and tournament champs. They got Princeton, and then they got Oregon, Wichita State. If you're a fan of offense, Boggle Ballpark is going to be the place for you because you got Wichita State, Arkansas, who like to knock the ball out of the park, and Oregon has some power in their bats as we go over to the right side of the draw. We had Caylan Arnold from the ACC Network Xtra joining us talking about Florida State. They start off with Howard. By the way, I didn't get a chance to really talk about this earlier. Congratulations and a salute to Tori Tyson, the head coach of the Howard Bison. If you follow her social media, you know what she's been going through the last few months. So to see her team make it to the NCAA tournament, winning the MEAC, knocking off Morgan State twice in the process to do so, a congratulations to Tori Tyson and the love that she received on social media, rightfully and richly so. A tremendous story, and I'm sure Howard is excited to be there, and Florida State will be welcoming them warmly and rudely at the same time to Tallahassee. And then you got USF and Mississippi State. Georgina Corrick did not pitch the conference championship game versus UCF. Ken Erickson realizing that they were going to need her if they made the postseason, which they did as a 3 seed, and they'll take on Mississippi State with Mia Davidson and her last go around in the postseason with the Bulldogs. And Missouri, we talked about their regional a little bit earlier. Missouri State, Arizona, Illinois. Clemson's regional, this one could also be a regional that you could see potentially 1, 2, and 3 win, and then the 4 seed be a pain in the side. Auburn, they have a good offense, good pitching staff with Penta and Lowe. Louisiana with those dynamic bats. Oklahoma State, they got Fordham, who won the A-10. You got North Texas and then Nebraska, 41 season. Great job by Coach Ron Revelle winning the Big Ten championship, their first in program history. Alabama, a lot of you have said that Alabama might be in the most trouble in their regional, especially if they don't have Lexi Kilfoyle. That will be fascinating to follow along with. They got Chattanooga, who bashed their way back. They trailed 7-2 in the SoCon championship to UNC Greensboro before battling their way back to win an extra innings. Stanford versus Murray State, 2-3 matchup. Stanford with that 3 great arms. They can give they can give Alabama trouble. They were regional finalists last year in Fayetteville. Tennessee, with a healthy Ashley Rogers and Aaron Edmondson, they'll take on Campbell with Sharonda McDonald. And you got Oregon State versus Ohio State. Florida, 14 seed. Florida takes on Canisius, and then they got Georgia Tech and Wisconsin in that regional. And then you got Virginia Tech, the 3 seed, the ACC regular season champs. They will take on St. Francis, the Red Flashes. And then you got Miami of Ohio and Kentucky routing out the regional in Blacksburg. So, presuming all the seeds play out, which has been the case in each of the last 2 years. Rob has an interesting question. Well, I'll get to that in a second. Super regional matchups will be Virginia Tech hosting Florida, Alabama hosting Tennessee, Oklahoma State taking on Clemson, Florida State hosting Mizzou, Arkansas versus Washington, Duke taking on UCLA in Los Angeles, Arizona State hosting Northwestern, and Oklahoma versus UCF, or as UCF fans like to call it, the Dylan Gabriel Invitational. Dylan Gabriel, former UCF quarterback, transferred to Oklahoma by way of the transfer portal. Rob Steffler asked an interesting question. Do you believe they should reseed after regionals? I've always been one of those people where I don't mind them keeping the bracket the same for regionals and super regionals. I'm one of those people where once you get your 8 to Oklahoma City, then you reseed them based on, okay, if top 1 through 8 in terms of, like, let's say if the number 3 national seed gets knocked out, you bump up the next highest seed in their place. But that's neither here nor there. Wait, what do I know? I'm just a brother who hosts a podcast. And speaking of people who host podcasts, joining us now, someone who hosts the Believe in Softball podcast and has seen a lot of these Pac-12 teams covering the Pac-12 network. Jenna Becerra joining us on this Selection Sunday evening. Jenna, hello. Very interesting things going on in the Pac-12. How are you, my dear?
I am good. I'm great. I mean, Selection Sunday is always one of my favorite days of the year. So just to see all that go down and for it to be a little bit more normal this year too than last year has been fun in many ways. So I'm great.
Yeah, a lot of storylines in the Pac-12, starting with UCLA getting the nod over Arizona State as the national seed. UCLA 5, Arizona State 8. Your thoughts on the Bruins getting the higher national seed over the Sun Devils, despite the fact Arizona State won the regular season championship and beat the Bruins head-to-head?
I expected it. So that's the thing with these selection shows and the committee. There's also, it's like, there's one answer you could give for anything where it's like, okay, this is what I should be versus what I think it's going to be. So for me, I expected UCLA to be higher. They've been consistently ranked higher in all of the polls the entire season. If you look at the actual records though, like, and to your point, like ASU had the outright title at the end of the day in conference play as of this past weekend. If you're the Sun Devils, yeah, that's a little bit frustrating. But I think we have heard from multiple people, including, for example, like head coach Heather Tarr at Washington, that she thought in the middle of Pac-12 play that actually UCLA might be the number one team in the country, which was a bold statement considering you have the Oklahomas of the world. But their pitching staff is so deep that I think as long as everyone stays healthy, like Megan Freeman wasn't able to compete at the World Series last year, for example, because she wasn't healthy. But if everybody stays healthy, they just have so many options in the circle combined with their, just offensive power that they're tough. So I can understand where it came from. What I was going to be upset about is if ASU did not get in the top 8 seeds to host the Supers. That made me nervous when I didn't hear them at number 7. I was like, if they're not number 8, I'm going to lose it. But they got in there. So,
well, they got it. It felt like the committee is like, okay, yeah, we're going to give you a national seed, but we're going to give you the hardest path possible because this Tempe regional, I feel, Jenna, is the hardest regional of the 16 national seeds because you have Cal State Fullerton, who's is battle tested and competes with Pac-12 teams yearly. You got LSU, who beat Alabama in the regular season and can compete with anybody in the SEC. And you got San Diego State with Stacey Newman-Denise, Maggie Ballin, Mountain West Pitcher of the Year, and Rachel Garcia, who knows a thing or two about pitching against the Pac-12. So it's like, did they really award Arizona State for getting a national seed with the regional draw that they gave them?
Great question. Very fair argument. It's tough. It is one of the regionals that I'm most looking forward to watching for all the reasons you just mentioned. The coaching staffs of all of these teams, I have personal respect for each of them for different reasons, but just absolutely fantastic. Coach Ford was actually my assistant coach when I was at Stanford back when she was in the Pac before she came back with the Fresno State in between. Then you have Stacey Newman, who's obviously one of the greats to ever do it as a catcher, as a player. Her first season as the head coach after waiting in the wings for so long with Van Wyck. And then now, not only that, her staff that she's built. So you mentioned Rachel Garcia, who's even calling pitches. Amazing. But then you have Victoria Hayward, who's an Olympian with Team
Victoria
Canada.
Hayward, yes.
Knows what it's like to be in the Pac and to hit in the Pac as well. And you kind of have that in terms of the hitting piece. Rachel Garcia's sort of right-handed mentality. Victoria Hayward is an absolute stud in terms of being that triple threat. You have just so many levers to pull in that situation. And then I just think, Cal State Fullerton's a fun team too to watch. You think about Danielle O'Toole. Again, we're talking about Pac-12 knowledge, right? Like someone who came from Arizona, the lefty, and also an Olympian with Team Mexico. There are some fantastic people for these ladies to be learning from, and all of those teams have been fun to watch this season. So I don't think necessarily Arizona was rewarded for that, but I think we will, as viewers, be rewarded by just some good softball coming out of Tempe.
That's going to be probably the regional that I'm going to be looking at the most in terms of my phone. Like, okay, what's going on in Tempe? What's going on in Tempe? Now, one of our loyal followers, Fabric, says, when will Victor ask Jenna about Stanford's chances? Well, I'm going to ask her right now, Fabric. And look, a lot of people in the chat, Jenna, felt that your alma mater, Stanford, has a real good chance in Tuscaloosa. You got to get by Murray State first in the 2-3 matchup. But you've seen Stanford a lot of times this year. They got that three-headed monster, more dynamic offense than what we've seen last year. Does Stanford have a legitimate chance to make it out of Tuscaloosa and go to Supers?
I think they do. So just taking off my, alumni hat also, I actually think they do. I mean, this is a team where they have snapped 2 20-plus win streaks at home during the Pac-12 season for 2 top 10 teams at the time, with UCLA and ASU, who only lost, other than ASU only lost a series to Stanford. And then for UCLA, other than the ASU series that they lost, they only lost to Stanford. Like, this is the team that really shook things up immediately just in the pack. And to me, the Stanford strengths are what you need in the postseason more than ever. You really have to have pitching be absolutely solid. You need all cylinders firing, really. But pitching and defense is absolutely key, because to me, when you get to the postseason, there's that extra sort of level of adrenaline, and there's just a lot going on. Sometimes it's not just who's going to come up with the big hits or the big moments, but who's going to make the first mistake that ends up giving up that game to the other team. So to me, pitching and defense is going to be huge. And Elena Vaughter is legitimately one of the best pitchers in the country. She is. She has been the key to both of those huge series wins, to all of their, I think there's 5 or 6 top 10, I think 4 top 10 wins that they've had this season, and then also multiple ranked wins that they've had this season. They've been in and out of the rankings themselves, and their defense is just absolutely solid. I mean, I would say that across the pack as well. Actually, there's like 4 teams as a team have over a 970 fielding percentage, Stanford being one of them. And that has been their bread and butter. So if they can keep that rolling, I think they got a shot.
It's fascinating to see the pack in terms of the different regionals that they have. And Arizona, a lot of people, they were kind of the question, would they be in? Would the streak continue? They had to wait a long time to see their name show up, but they show up. They're going to Columbia, and they're taking on an Illinois team who knocked off LSU in the preseason, knocked off Arkansas in the preseason, played Louisiana tough, knocked off Northwestern before the Big Ten tournament. So Arizona and Caitlin Lowe, they don't have an easy out in their 2-3 matchup taking on Illinois.
No, they don't. They don't. It's going to be tough. And yes, waiting that long is not something that Arizona is used to having to do in these situations and with the selection show. But I mean, you talk about as you know, Victor, I've talked to you and Eric about this multiple times about the coaching staff and what the knowledge and expertise they're able to impart. Arizona is an amazing example of that. Just having Caitlin Lowe at the helm in her first season as a head coach, but then you have Tara Moat, who knows what it's like not to win once, but back to back, and in terms of a national championship as a pitching coach, and then Lauren Lappin, who obviously a Stanford alum, but just incredibly competitive, Olympian, all that good stuff. So I just think that they have the mentality to compete. It's going to be tough. I think what they've been able to do over the season is their bats will keep them in the game. So they just need to hope and work towards and make sure they have plans in place that they follow offensively to keep that going as they head into the postseason.
Your overall thoughts in terms of the selection? We had Andrew Haynes on, and the biggest thing he mentioned was that it was more normal. You mentioned the word normal yourself when you came on. What was your biggest takeaway in terms of the selection as a whole? Was there like a seeding that you were surprised at? Was there a particular regional outside of Tempe that kind of caught your eye? What was your biggest storyline that you're looking at?
Yeah, I think my gut reaction was, like I said, the normalization piece, but it was more like, I think we all had very strong feelings last year with the selection show and what the results were. And then you see, Washington walking out when they saw where they were seated at 16, et cetera. This year, I think not only does it feel more balanced and maybe there was more effort put in that regard, but I also think that because the schedules were more normalized, that allowed for this as well. When California teams, and I'm looking at like the Pac-12, but even beyond the Pac-12, can only play each other, and they have very strict like county regulations that don't allow them to do certain things. Like Stanford wasn't on campus till February 4th, and they started playing like a week later, last year. So for those things to not be an issue this year, I think allowed it to feel more balanced. Obviously, something that sticks out is the ACC. We knew this, that they were I don't want to say up and coming because there's always been talent in the ACC, but I think
Right.
with the additions of Clemson and Duke not only being solid and strong, but having such high seeds, like Clemson being at number 10 when this is really truly only their second full season, that's incredible.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
like overstated how incredible that is, that they were able to do that. So that stuck out to me. I think a couple things just outside of kind of the pack and maybe the norm or the mainstream conversation would be, I'm thrilled to see Howard making the tournament.
Yes.
Tori
Yes.
Tyson, yes, she's somebody who I've had on the Believe in Softball podcast more than once. I love her energy, her fire. She really fights for her team to get the resources, and they fight really hard as well. So I'm thrilled to see that. I think something that Eric, I'm sure, is thrilled to see is that UCF is hosting. Like, so they're the only mid-major
Yes.
hosting. They earned that, in my opinion. I think that's fantastic. And, then there's Northwestern. It's very heavy, obviously, on the PAC, the ACC, and the SEC. But then Northwestern, snuck in there to host a regional as, the only Big Ten team to do it. So I'm going to have my eye on them as well. Obviously, there are some others like Michigan to pay attention to that will be, facing UCF in that regional too. But there's some of those sort of secondary things. Maybe they're not secondary to me, but people may view them that way that I'm excited about too.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting, particularly with the Michigan component. They got to get by a very scrappy South Dakota State team in that opening game in Orlando, so I'm sure that'll be interesting. Your podcast, Believe in Softball, you keep churning out the guests left and right. You had Aubrey Monroe on the podcast. You had Amanda Freed as your last guest. I'm assuming part 2 of your interview with her. That's going to be coming out on your next episode?
Yes, that's correct. That'll be this week, part 2.
Man, she's just turning out the content left and right, folks. So where can folks find your podcast, and where can they follow you on social media?
I appreciate that, Victor, because I'm trying. As you know, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's worth it. We love it. That's why we do it. But you can find you can follow the show on social media on Instagram and Twitter at Believe in Softball. And for those that may be new to it, Believe is spelled BLEAV. It's with Believe Network. You can follow me on Instagram at Jenna Becerra or Twitter at Jenna Becerra01. It's on all of the main networks, all the podcast platforms. You can find it anywhere, and we're also on YouTube, so subscribe there.
Yes, great interviews, great content. So we definitely want to make sure you listen to that podcast with a particular interview with Amanda Freed. Part 2 coming out this week. Jenna, thank you so much for the time. I know you've had a very busy weekend yourself, and are you gonna? Let me ask you this question before I let you go. Any possibility you're traveling to Tuscaloosa to support the Cardinal this weekend?
It is probably a bit of a long shot, but I wouldn't say it's out of the realm of possibility. We will see.
I just had to ask. I just had to ask. I wouldn't be doing my job as a host if I didn't ask a very tough, pertinent question. That was wonderful.
Yes. No, it's a great question.
Well, Jenna, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations to your Cardinal, and we'll definitely have you on down the road on the road to Oklahoma City.
Sounds great. Thank you, Victor.
Jenna Becerra from Believe in Softball. Capping off a very fun evening here on our live stream. Got a few more questions we want to get to. But by the way, just want to make sure we want to clear this up. We are going to have a normal podcast on tomorrow. Eric Lopez, where Aaron and I will be recording later on tonight. We're going to get Eric's thoughts and reactions on when he heard about UCF hosting regionals. And we're going to air the interviews that we have with Caylan Arnold, Andrew Haynes, Jenna Becerra, some stuff with Justin and I. And it's going to be a very fun evening, to say the least. A couple questions that we had. Fabric brought up. And to be perfectly honest with you, Fabric, I don't know. I don't know. If you follow Graham Hayes on Twitter, he brought up he had a very long thread about why the Baddie was not, much less on the top 10, top 25 list, which is absolutely ridiculous. And trust me, all opposing pitchers have paid a severe penalty for that snub, which we'll call that a snub. Again, would be the first player. She's the first player in college softball history to go 25-25, and will likely be the first player to go 30-30 if Wichita State makes a deep run to potentially the regional final, likely versus Arkansas, which is going to be a very fascinating matchup, to say the least. Jonathan India says 100% correct. AV and Varder deserves some respect. Yeah, she's one of the best pitchers that we haven't talked enough about this year, particularly in the Pac-12. So yeah, it's good, nice to see her get some national recognition, and she'll definitely get that if Stanford makes a deep run, like a lot of you people feel it will. Now, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the Women's College World Series, they are extending the series an extra day. So, Women's College World Series will be June 2nd and will run at the max through June the 10th. And again, no crossover, meaning that the team from one side of the bracket won't play another team for the other side of the bracket or vice versa. So Parker said no crossover means Oklahoma versus UCLA or Arkansas World Series final is impossible. Really don't like it. I mean, hey, them's the breaks. Now, presuming all the top 8 seeds advance, which has happened which happened 2 of the last 3 years, the lone exception being last year with James Madison. Your potential Women's College World Series matchups: Oklahoma, Arizona State, and Arkansas versus UCLA. That's on one side of the bracket. The other side of the bracket, Florida State, Oklahoma State. Hopefully they won't play in that game at 1:30 in the morning like they did last year. Alabama, Virginia Tech, a rematch of those 2 classic games played in Tuscaloosa earlier this year, both won by the Crimson Tide. But as we all know, ladies and gentlemen, games aren't played on paper. Games are played on the field. So we'll have thoughts about that on our Thursday episode. That's when we're going to make our official picks, and we're going to talk about everything that took place. So, podcasting schedule alert. Normal podcast tomorrow. We'll got some exclusive content. Eric Lopez and I will talk about what he saw and what we all saw with UCF. We'll get his firsthand account on UCF getting the host, which he accurately. By the way, Eric Lopez, ladies and gentlemen, we must acknowledge Eric Lopez as the tribal broadcasting chief. 64 of 64 correct. Nailed all 16 regional hosts. Nailed 2 regionals exactly to the T. I mean, what you all acknowledge Eric. I wish the rest of college softball does the same. I mean, they do, but they do it privately. So we appreciate that. We appreciate that. So yeah, Eric and I will definitely have a lot to talk about when we get together this evening to record. And again, make sure that you listen to our podcast tomorrow. We have a regular podcast, exclusive stuff, Eric and I, and then we'll have the interviews with Caylan Arnold, Andrew Haynes, and Jenna Becerra. All will be appearing on tomorrow's episode. So govern yourselves accordingly. For you D2 fans, D2 Tuesday will be out on Tuesday at our regular time. Getting ready for Super Regionals in D2, Super Regionals in D3, all the good stuff. So, it's been a long night. It's been a very long, it's been a long night for all of you. My night is just beginning because, again, got to record with Eric, got to take care of everything else, and get ready for our episode tomorrow. So, thanks again to our tremendous guest, Jenna Becerra from Believe in Softball on the Pac-12 Network. Andrew Haynes, voice of Texas Longhorns Softball. Also, want to thank Caylan Arnold for appearing at ACC Network Xtra analyst and Florida State pitcher. Holly Rowe talking about Mike White flipping the bird right now. Didn't have that on the bingo card. Parker, I don't think any of us had Mike White flipping the bird on the bingo card, much less Holly Rowe talking about Mike White flipping the bird right now. So, I mean, goodness gracious. Woo, yeah. When I first heard that story, I was like, okay, gonna be one of those days. And well, gonna be one of those days. Well, and sure enough, that was the case. Hey, thanks y'all for joining us. Thanks to Justin McLeod for coming on and kind of riding the ship with me before he had to step out and handle his interview with the chairwoman, Sherry Atkins. Who'll definitely have his thoughts on that. He'll have an article on that on extrainningssoftball.com. Make sure you follow that. And make sure you follow our coverage, ladies and gentlemen. The road to OKC has officially begun. Our congratulations to all 64 teams. And we're going to be going live throughout the postseason. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and social media. to find out when our next live show will be. And for those of you who are in the chat right now, make sure you tell your fellow softball fans to come to our softball live stream. We tell it like it tis. We give it to you straight. We don't put no sugar. We don't sugarcoat it. We tell you like it is, and we let you know what to expect to happen. And which we all know with the postseason, the one thing we can expect is the unexpected. So with that being said, for Justin McLeod, for Caylan Arnold, for Andrew Haynes, for Jenna Becerra, and for my co-host in extension, Eric Lopez, who is probably busy celebrating UCF and may not appear on Monday's show. I don't know. We shall see. I'm Victor Anderson. Thank you so much for tuning in to our In the Circle Selection Sunday live stream spectacular. We will talk to you on Monday's podcast. Have a great night. Free Brittany Grinder. And as we always say, good night, Canada.